Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over how to make a license plate mount for your new Mustang. Now this mount is the no drill mount. You won't have to drill any holes into your Mustang. This one, it bolts to your honeycomb grill as you see at the bottom here. Now keep in mind this will not work on any of the grills that do not have the honeycomb setup, so just keep that in mind. Alright, so we're going to jump right in. I'm going to show you what I'm going to try to build here. Now we did a little bit of light CAD work just so you can see what I'm trying to do, and that way it saves us a little bit of money and time on the build process. So we have our honeycomb grill right here, which is in yellow. I didn't do the whole grill, just did enough area just to kind of get our feet wet and kind of get an idea of where I need, where I need to actually put the brackets and what sizes. Then I found a nice little license plate holder here. This one seems to be a popular one I found on the internet, and it also seems to be pretty durable, and that doesn't look too bad. So I purchased one of these, brought it home, measured everything out, and CAD'd it up. That way we get pretty precise measurements and pretty good fitting. I kind of like this. Next, I saw how we were able to fit this license plate holder by using U-bolts. And right now we found 2 stainless steel U-bolts for a pretty good deal. Now the really cool part, since they're stainless steel, you really don't have to worry about rust, which is a nice little bonus when it's really close to the ground and it's going to be out in the elements. And of course those U-bolts come with a nut, a washer, and a nice little square washer, so it gives a little bit of extra reinforcement on that honeycomb area. Now, the part that you're going to have to make that's custom are these aluminum tubes. I'll tell you, we'll go to this side over here, and you're going to see some aluminum tubes right here. Now, the aluminum tube doesn't come threaded. This one, you're going to see some thread in there. Now, for those of you at home who do not want to thread it, you don't have to. You can go ahead and actually drill this whole thing out, install it, and go ahead and use the nuts on the top of your license plate bracket here, or your license plate mount. Now I went ahead and threaded it just so it acts as a nut on this U-bolt. Gives you a little extra stability and a little bit of backup. You want to build quality. You're putting it on your beautiful Mustang. So since this is the only custom part, I'll show you to the right the measurements, and we'll get to that in a second. Most of this is stock except this aluminum tube. This is the only thing you're going to custom make. So let me go over to the side over here. Ta-da! There we go. And let me go and do a top view for you. There we go. Now we got a top view. So this is all in metric. I did put standard all to the side right here, but everything here is going to be in metric except the drill hole at the bottom, which I'll get to that in a second. So the tube itself, 55 millimeters long, which I want to show you how I cut it in the video. And then, and I'll tell you what, let me go 2D wireframe that we can see inside. There we go. So we have our 2D wire. So now you can see the thread depth. I have a 15 millimeter thread depth. Now you could thread this all the way down if you have a long enough tap. However, I only did 15 because the tap we have is very limited. Not to mention, it's a lot of leg work if you have to tap this thing all the way down, and it seems to be a little overkill. So I only tapped this thing 15 millimeters down. Pretty easy. Now 40 millimeters here, that's where you're going to hollow it out a little bit more with a standard drill bit. I try to keep everything standard as possible. I even try to find standard U-bolts. Unfortunately, the standard U-bolts that you find at a hardware store just wouldn't work. This had to be in metric just to get a nice clean fit. So I went ahead and kept it metric for the rest of the whole build except this one spot, just because I have more standard drill bits than metric. This is going to be an M6 tap, since the U-bolts are going to be also M6. So these U-bolts, M6. And that way you can see what I did here. Let me go back to, we'll do shades of gray. So you're going to thread the top, and then the bottom you're going to take a 1564 drill bit and drill it about 40 millimeters through. That way it slides on the U-bolt very easily and it doesn't fight you, because these tubes are naturally 5 millimeters. They won't fit on the U-bolt. You're going to have to hollow it out. Again, I'll show you that in a video. It's very easy to do. Alright, so let's jump right into the build process and have some fun. So here are the tools and material we're going to need to do our job. I picked up a vise from Harbor Freight. This makes it easier to work with these aluminum tubes right here, which we purchased online. We have the license plate mount, also purchased online, with the 2 U-bolts. These are stainless steel U-bolts, 10 millimeter wrench, socket wrench. We have a 6 millimeter tap. We have a drill with a 1564 drill bit, and it's taped off, which I'll go in there later on in the episode. We have a pipe cutter. We have a scale, which is a ruler. Gloves, safety glasses of course, cutting lube, and then I picked up some clear coat and some black spray paint. This is experimental black spray paint, and also you'll need some sandpaper. So with the vise, I went ahead and attached it to the back of the truck. Just gives us a little easier spot to work with. Very sturdy. Now the really good part about this vise, it has grooves within the vise to help hold down these tubes, these aluminum tubes. And you can see little V cuts in there. And that's where we're going to be holding this aluminum tube with. So right here, you're going to see those two parts. That's where it's going to go into. Now before you clamp that aluminum tube in the vise, grab some paper towels or cloth. I went ahead and grabbed paper towels from the kitchen, fold them up, and we're going to insert it in the vise in between the vise and the tube. This will keep us from scratching the tube up, so that way we can use the whole tube and not worry about putting grooves or any dents or dings into it while we're tapping and drilling into it. And as you're tightening up, make sure the tube is within those V cuts of that vise. And when you snug it up, make sure you don't over tighten it. You could still put grooves and little creases in your tube. So just make it nice and snug so it's not going anywhere. All right, let me get a little closer to this tube. So this tube has a 5mm inside diameter, which is perfect for using the 6mm tap to go ahead and tap this hole. We don't have to do any extra drilling with this. Just grab your 6mm and we'll go ahead and get right started. So I have my dry lube. This is something you can get from a hardware store. This is just basic lubricant, but it's great for also using as a cutting fluid. So if you want to use it for drilling or tapping, it's great. It's very, very fine, very ideal for this situation. So I applied a little bit in the tube and a little bit on the tap, and we're going to work on bringing this tap in very slowly. Now here's where the hard part comes in. Start the tap, just like you see here, and we're going to go very slowly. And this is where the hardest part comes in. You want to go as straight as possible and go in slow. And as soon as you start getting tension, back off. And you're going to repeat these steps over and over. Take it out, wipe off the excess debris or metal, and go back in. And we're going to keep tightening it up until it gets very snug, and then back out. Anytime it gets snug, don't keep going. That's how you snap taps. Just back out and keep repeating over and over. Now, since this is a very tedious process, take your time with it. And you can never add too much lubricant. Anytime you feel it's getting dry, add a little bit more and go back in. All right, now for the fast forward montage. All right, now that we're done testing our patience, let's take a look. Now keep in mind, I did go a little further than 15mm on our tap, which is perfectly fine. You can never have too much thread. However, there is a little bit of a burr or a mushroom at the very top of our tube. This is expected. Do not worry whatsoever. We know how to take care of this. We're going to grab some of our sandpaper right here. I went ahead and had 600 grit laying around, and we're going to put it right on top of our vise. You can use whichever sandpaper you have, and just make sure it's flat on the vise or a flat surface. And then we're going to go ahead and do back and forth motions and circular motions. All right, and that looks pretty good. And all we're going to do is just save this sandpaper for later for the other two pieces. We're going to take a look at this. Looks very flat and shiny. Not too shabby whatsoever. And if we do a quick check real quick, it should sit flat right on our vise, and it does perfectly. Next, we need to mark off 55mm or 5.5 centimeters. Now you can use a scale like I have right here, or you can use a ruler at home, whichever you have. Or for some of you who have a pair of calipers, which I'm about to grab right now, you can go ahead and set those to 55mm and scribe your tube to get a very precise measurement. So we're going to start at 0, go all the way down to 55, and this may take a second just because I want precise measurements. Horseshoes and hand grenades as long as it's close. Tighten down the screw so it does not move. And this is where the easy part comes in. And little by little, we're going to put little scratches right into our tube and go in a circle. That way it makes a nice clean mark all the way around our aluminum tube. And of course, just as a dummy check, we checked it against our scale. Perfect. And similar to our method we did earlier, we're going to take our paper towels, place them in the vise as you can see right here. And this might be just a little bit tedious, but I want to keep it from scratching our tube. And we're going to tighten down our aluminum tube so we can go ahead and cut it to that 55mm length. And make sure it's nice and snug, like so. Alright, now that we're ready to cut our tube, let's grab our pipe cutter right here. This is one I purchased online. They're very easy to get a hold of. You can go to a local hardware store and grab it. Great for cutting aluminum and copper. Now for those of you at home who do not wish to obtain a pipe cutter, no big deal. You can do this with a cutting wheel, bandsaw, or even a hacksaw. You do not have to use a pipe cutter. I just did it so it gives me a little bit more precise accuracy on my cutting spot, as well as it gives it a nice perfect circle as you're cutting it. So you can see right here I zoomed right in. You can see I put that nice little cutting wheel right on that scribe we made earlier, so we know exactly we're getting 55mm. And I went ahead and add a little cutting fluid there, and we're going to go ahead and do a full turn. Tighten it. Full turn again, and you're going to keep repeating this step over and over until you cut that tube to that perfect length. And just like before, let's go ahead and start the fast forward montage. It's starting to look like we're at the last inning stretch. Just a few more turns. This is where, again, your patience will be tested. So start working it back and forth, just like again, tighten it up, and you should start seeing it break loose like so. And all we gotta do is once it starts breaking loose, go ahead and loosen up the pipe cutter, and it should come right out. Now, just like the end that we tapped, this one also will have a slight mushroom to it. And we're going to deal with it the exact same way. We're going to take that same sandpaper, put it right on our vise, and do the same exact sanding process as we did the first time. And of course, that looks perfect. Alright, now that we finished tapping it and cutting it to length, now all we have to do is bore out the inside of this thing to make it a sleeve. So we're going to go ahead and do the same method as we did before. Take our paper towels, put it in the vise in between those V-cut grooves, make sure it's nice and snug. Alright, now let's grab our drill bit, 1564. This is very close to 6mm, it's just a little bit of hair under it. We're going to go ahead and measure 40mm because that's the depth we want to drill into our aluminum tube, 40mm. And we're going to do this by putting a piece of electrical tape right at the 40mm mark. That tells us when to stop drilling into this aluminum tube. And then add a little cutting fluid within the tube and on the drill bit so it's nice and clean. And let's have some fun. Look at that. Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. And you're going to want to repeat these steps 4 times. We have 1, made 2, 3, and number 4. So now we get to the paint job. Alright, we're getting to the last inning stretch. So next, I'm going to go ahead and take off these flat washers off these stainless steel U-bolts because I want to paint the items that are going to be visible outside the car. So I'm going to do this by taking a cardboard box, and I went ahead and add toothpicks on the cardboard box. This acts for multiple reasons. One, I can go ahead and stand up the aluminum tubes on those toothpicks, as well as anytime there's wind or you're actually using spray paint, it will keep these parts from moving all over the place and falling off the cardboard. So all I did was just take these toothpicks and poke them in like so. And we did this for both flat washers. And let's do the fast forward montage. That way we can get through this a little quicker. Let's grab our black gloss paint here. Now this paint is a 2-in-1 paint and primer. I typically don't use this, but I want to give it a shot. It says shake for 1 minute, so we're going to do that before use. And what I want to do is I want to do a test stream right on the back of the cardboard box. I want to check, see if the can's defective first and make sure it's a good steady stream and it's not, causing streaks or leaking. And we're doing nice steady streams, back and forth motions, nice and steady. You want to do a continuous stream before the parts and after the parts. And make sure you don't apply too much in one coat. If not, it's going to cause drips. So go nice, smooth, back and forth motions. For those of you at home who are doing this project, you don't have to use the black paint. I just went ahead and used it because this is going on a black accent Mustang. Now, if you want to try this with your factory colors, like whether it's Kona Blue or any other color, by all means, use those colors and send me your pics. I'm curious how they turn out.
20 minutes later.
And after about 20 minutes, it's actually good to handle. So we went ahead and turned them 90 degrees because when I painted left to right, it didn't get all the sides of these tubes. So I went ahead and turned them, and we're going to do the same method again just to make sure we get all the sides of the tubes.
One hour later.
After a little over an hour, we actually can handle these pieces. I went ahead and flipped them all the way over so we can get the other side of these tubes. And we're going to do the same thing with the square washers. We want to lift up off the toothpicks and flip them over and do the same process again.
15 minutes later.
And while the paint is still tacky, we're going to grab our clear coat, shake it up very nicely, and we're going to apply nice thin coats of clear coat. Again, do not overspray. We don't want to cause dripping. And you want to do several passes of clear coat.
A few minutes later.
After a few minutes, do the same process again. We're going to add another coat of clear coat. We like nice thick clear coat.
One pair of pants later.
Alright, 24 hours later, and the clear coat and paint should be dry. Now we're ready for installation. So, if you get right here, you're going to see two little divots in the bumper. That's where the license plate holder was originally supposed to go. But if you go between those 2 points, that's going to be our center line. That's going to be our reference. So we're going to count from the center line, the second honeycomb down, go 1, and it's the second and third holes on the left. That's where our U-bolt's going to go. So all you got to do is work it in. It's very easy to do, just take your time. It's going to go through one hole and then you back it off, and it's going to go through the other hole just as easy. And we're going to let that sit there and do the same thing on the other side. These should be symmetrical. Alright, we're going to grab some blue Loctite. Now, you don't necessarily need this, but I prefer it. I like to have a little bit of stability on anything that's going to vibrate. So, blue Loctite, we're going to apply it to all the threads on the U-bolt here. Put our black square washer right on the U-bolt. Nice, so. Take our aluminum tube, and you want the threaded side facing you. So, you should go ahead and start screwing them all the way in. And basically, it's just like putting on a nut. No big deal, just screw it all the way in until you see about 5 to 6 millimeters worth of thread. And do the same thing on the other side. As you're installing your aluminum tubes, just make sure they're nice and snug, and you should be good to go. And we're going to repeat the same steps on the other side. And that looks perfect. Nice and stable. Let's grab our license plate frame, and it should be able to install perfectly right on top of those U-bolts, like so. And it's going to have a slight curve to it is what we want. And all you have to do is install your stainless steel washers, and then install your nuts. Grab your 10mm socket and socket wrench and tighten it up to it's completely snug to where you know it's not going to come off anymore. Alright, do a little quick check. Beautiful. Before we install our license plate, let's do a little walk around to make sure we have good clearance and make sure there's no issues. Right now that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and look at the top a little bit. Perfect clearance. We accounted for a few millimeters of clearance and that looks perfect. Now we can install our license plate. The plate bracket does come with silver screws, but I'm using the black ones that came with the factory license plate holder. One, because it's a black accent car, and two, it just looks so much better. So we're going to go install these and use your flathead screwdriver and tighten them to their snug. And of course, let's do a quick test run to make sure it doesn't fall off. Too shabby at all. Well, if you found the video helpful, please like and subscribe.